Stuttering. From Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. http://en.wikipedia.org. Stuttering, known as stammering in parts of the UK and scientifically known as dysphemia, is a speech disorder in which the normal flow of speech is frequently disrupted by repetitions, sounds, syllables, words, or phrases, pauses, and prolongations that differ both in frequency and severity from those of normally fluent individuals. The term stuttering is most commonly associated with involuntary sound repetition, but it also encompasses the abnormal hesitation or pausing before speech, referred to by stutterers as blocks, as the prolongation of certain sounds, usually vowels. Much of what constitutes stuttering cannot be observed by the listener. This includes such things as sound and word fears, situational fears, anxiety, tension, shame, and a feeling of loss of control during speech. The emotional state of the individual who stutters in response to the stuttering often constitutes the most difficult aspect of the disorder. Stuttering is listed in the ICD-10 as F98.5 and the ICD-9 as 307.0. About 1% of adults and 5% of children in the world are afflicted with some form of the disorder, with slightly higher percentages of affected African, 8% to 9%, and West Indies, 3 to 4% adults. Men account for approximately 80% of all stutterers, while women are much more likely to either outgrow or recover from the disorder. Stuttering is essentially neurogenic, neuropathological rather than mental, in origin, and is generally not a problem with the physical production of speech sounds, see voice disorders, or putting thoughts into words, see dyslexia and cluttering. Stuttering does not affect intelligence, and apart from their speech problem, people who stutter are normal. Anxiety, low confidence, nervousness, and stress therefore do not cause stuttering, although they often worsen it. The disorder is also variable. This means that in certain situations, such as talking on the telephone, the stuttering might be increased, or it might be lessened, depending on the anxiety level connected with that activity. In other situations, such as singing, as with country music star Mel Tillis, or speaking alone, or reading from a script, as with actor James Earl Jones, fluency improves. Some mild stutterers, such as Bob Newhart, have used it to their advantage. Although the exact etiology of stuttering is unknown, both genetics and neurophysiology are thought to contribute. One theory is that an inherited genetic factor may cause the speech pathways in the brain to be less efficient, contributing to the development of a stutter. Although there are many treatments and speech therapy techniques available to help increase fluency, there is essentially no cure for stuttering. Section 1. Causes. There is no known cause for stuttering. Theories about the causes of stuttering can be divided into 3 categories. Section 1.1. Genetics. Stuttering could possibly be inherited, and 50% to 70% of all stutterers are related to another stutterer. While having a stutterer in the family does not automatically create another stutterer, it has been shown to create stuttering potential, or a stuttering predisposition. This inherited genetic factor may cause the speech pathways in the brain to be less efficient, making it difficult for the stutterer to meet fluency demands and get his or her words out quickly. Genetics may also influence the temperament of some stutterers, which makes them react negatively to their own early stuttering behavior. In a 1999 study conducted jointly between U.S. and Australian researchers, hundreds of twins who stuttered were examined, with significant differences in concordance rates for stuttering being found between identical and fraternal twin pairs. Scientists are also working to identify the stuttering genes, largely through the Stuttering Research Project at the University of Illinois. Section 1.2. Childhood Development. In the past, the cause of stuttering was most often attributed to events during childhood development. Some argue that neurotic conflict or disturbed interpersonal relations during crucial stages of a child's development could create a stutter. Others said that stuttering develops from the normal mistakes all children make when learning to speak. See onset and development. When some children get caught in a vicious cycle of putting too much effort into speaking, tensing their speech production muscles too much, and consequently worsening their speech. While such activity does worsen an already present stutter, it does not create one. Today, these theories are generally disregarded in favor of the genetic and neurophysiological models. Section 1.2.1 The, quote, monster study. In 1939, a controversial study on the possibility of creating a stutterer was conducted by University of Iowa speech pathologist Wendell Johnson and his graduate student Mary Tudor. The study tried to create stutterers over the course of 4 months, using 22 unwitting orphans from the Soldiers and Sailors Orphans Home in Davenport, Iowa. Ethically acceptable at the time, it was designed to induce stuttering in normally fluent children and to test out Johnson's diagnosogenic theory, a theory suggesting that negative reactions to normal speech disfluencies cause stuttering in children. The study divided the orphans into 3 groups. 6 normally fluent orphans would be given negative evaluations and criticisms regarding their speech. Another group of 5 orphans who allegedly already stuttered would also receive that treatment, and the remaining 11 would be treated neutrally. The study concluded that the children given negative evaluative labeling went on to develop persistent, permanent stutters. The study was influential at the time, with many speech pathologists and child health and educational professionals accepting Johnson's theory. In 1988, Silverman first reported the results of his study in the Journal of Fluency Disorders and labeled it the Monster Study. While the information was well known to professionals in the area of stuttering, it was not until 2001 when the information was distributed to the public in a newspaper article. In June of 2001, the San Jose Mercury News revealed this study to the public for the first time, leading to widespread controversy and debate about scientific ethics. Soon after, University of Illinois professors Nicolene Ambrose and Ehud Yairi wrote a paper discrediting the 1939 study, revealing flaws in data collection and method, as well as pointing out that none of the orphans actually did develop a permanent stutter. While criticism of developing child speech can certainly make a present stutter worse, it does not create a stutter. Section 1.3 Neurophysiology. Another prominent view is that stuttering is caused by neural synchronization problems in the brain. Recent research indicates that stuttering may be correlated with disrupted fibers between the speech area and language planning area, both in the left hemisphere of the brain. Such a disruption could potentially be due to early brain damage or due to a genetic defect. Structural neuroimaging, where the anatomy of the brain can be visualized and analyzed, has shown an anatomical difference between the brains of those who stutter and those who do not. See research by Sommer et al. And Jenk et al. Functional neuroimaging, where processes in the brain can be observed, have also shown some differences in the state of stuttering. Differences in brain activity have been observed in other areas that are associated with speech motor function, such as the area of the primary motor cortex that controls mouth movements, the areas associated with perceiving and decoding sounds, the areas involved with the formulation and expression of language, and the area that controls the human body's Valsalva mechanism. See blocking. Section 1.4 Other causes. Stutters can be acquired late in life, usually through a stroke or other brain trauma, but sometimes from neurosurgical procedures. Rarer still are stutters induced by specific medications. Medications such as antidepressants, antihistamines, tranquilizers, and selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors have been known to affect speech in this way. While these afflictions create stutter-like conditions, they do not create a stutter in the traditional sense. Section 2. Onset and Development. Like most other speech disorders, stuttering begins in early childhood, when a child is first developing his or her speech and language skills. The vast majority of stutters develop between the ages of 2 and 5, with many stutterers outgrowing their stutter before adolescence. Most stutters manifest before the age of 7, although there have been rare cases of a stutter developing later. Almost all children go through a stage of disfluency in early speech, but when a child displays signs of a serious stutter, it is wise to seek professional help because stutters are much easier to prevent or lessen in their early stages. Stuttering can become a serious disability, and an untreated stutter usually becomes worse with time. For a developing child, a stutter can cause lower self-esteem and can increase anxiety and stress, all of which serve to worsen a stutter. Stutters can and often do hamper social development and limit educational and professional opportunities. As speech and language are difficult and complex skills to learn, almost all children have some difficulty in developing these skills. This results in normal disfluencies that tend to be single-syllable, whole word, or phrase repetitions, interjections, brief pauses, or revisions. In the early years, a child will not usually exhibit visible tension, frustration, or anxiety when speaking disfluently, and most will be unaware of the interruptions in their speech. With young stutterers, their disfluency tends to be episodic, and periods of stuttering are followed by periods of relative fluency. This pattern remains through all stages of a stutter's development, but as the stutter develops, the disfluencies tend to develop more into repetitions and sound prolongations, often combined together, e.g., let's go there. Usually by the age of 6, a stutter is exacerbated when a child is excited, upset, or under some type of pressure. Also around this age, a child will start to become aware of problems in his or her speech. After this age, stuttering includes repetitions, prolongations, and blocks. It also becomes more and more chronic, with longer periods of disfluency. Secondary motor behaviors, eye blinking, lip movements, etc., may be used during moments of stuttering or frustration. Also, fear and avoidance of sounds, words, people, or speaking situations usually begin at this time, along with feelings of embarrassment and shame. By age 14, the stutter is usually classified as an advanced stutter, characterized by frequent and noticeable interruptions, with poor eye contact and the use of various tricks to disguise the stuttering. Along with the mature stutter come advanced feelings of fear and increasingly frequent avoidance of unfavorable speaking situations. Around this time, many become fully aware of their disorder and begin to identify themselves as stutterers. With this may come deeper frustration, embarrassment, and shame. It is important to note that stuttering does not affect intelligence, and that stutterers are sometimes wrongly perceived as being less intelligent than non-stutterers. This is mainly due to the fact that stutterers often resort to a practice called word substitution, where words that are difficult for a stutterer to speak are replaced with less suitable words that are easier to pronounce. This often leads to awkward sentences which give an impression of feeble-mindedness. Stuttering is a communicative disorder that affects speech. It is not a language disorder, although a person's use of language is often affected or limited by a stutter. Table: Development of a stutter. Phase 1, age 2 through 6. Disfluencies tend to be single-syllable, whole word, or phrase repetitions, interjections, pauses, and revisions. The child will not exhibit visible tension, frustration, or anxiety when speaking disfluently. Normal disfluency will occur when the child is learning to walk or refining motor skills. There are periods, days or weeks, of fluency and disfluency. Changes in the child's environment can cause normal disfluency. Phase 2, age 2 through 6. Disfluencies tend to be repetitions and sound prolongations. More than 2 disfluencies put together, e.g., let's go there, and periods of fluency and disfluency come and go in cycles. The child demonstrates little awareness or concern about his or her disfluencies but may express frustration. Phase 3, age 2 through 6. Disfluency most commonly occurs at the beginning of words or phrases. The child tends to be more disfluent when excited or upset. Repetitions are usually part word as opposed to whole word. The stuttering comes and goes in cycles, sometimes triggered by events and stressors. The child may show awareness that speech is difficult in addition to the frustration. Stage 4, age 6 through 13. Types of disfluencies include repetitions, prolongations, and blocks. Stuttering becomes chronic without periods of fluency. Secondary behaviors appear: eye blinking, lip movements, etc. Stuttering tends to increase when excited, upset, or under some type of pressure. Fear and avoidance of sounds, words, people, or speaking situations may develop. The person may feel embarrassment or shame surrounding the stuttering. Phase 5, age 14 or greater. Speech is characterized by frequent and noticeable interruptions. The person may have poor eye contact and use various tricks to disguise the stuttering. The person anticipates stuttering, fears, and avoids speaking. The person identifies himself as a stutterer and experiences frustration, embarrassment, and/or shame. The person may attempt to choose a lifestyle where speaking can often be avoided. Source: Onset and Development, 2001. Footnote 1. Retrieved March 20th, 2005. Section 3. Characteristics. Section 3.1. Fluency. Speech fluency consists of three variables: continuity, rate, and ease of speaking. Continuity refers to speech that flows without hesitation or stoppage. Rate refers to the speed in which the words are spoken. For English-speaking adults, the mean overall speaking rate is 170 words per minute, or W/M, substantially quicker than the approximately 120 words per minute that stutterers produce. Ease of speaking refers to the amount of effort being expended to produce speech. Fluent speakers put very little muscular or physical effort into the act of speaking, while stutterers exert a relatively large amount of muscular effort to produce the same speech. In addition to the physical effort involved in producing speech, the mental effort is usually much greater in stutterers than non-stutterers. Disfluency in speech, including repetitions and prolongations, is normal for all speakers, but stuttering is distinct from normal disfluency in that it occurs with greater frequency and severity. The disfluencies occur much more often and tend to last longer with more strain. The types of disfluencies are also markedly different. Normal disfluencies tend to be a repetition of whole words or the interjection of syllables like and while stuttering tends to be repetition and prolongation of sounds and syllables. The various behaviors that can disrupt the smooth flow of speech include repetition, prolongation, and pauses. Repetition is by far the most common behavior exhibited by stutterers. In speech, repetition occurs when a unit of speech, such as a phrase, word, or syllable, is superfluously repeated. Examples of repetition of a phrase would be I want to go to the store, or I want to go to the store. A word repetition would often resemble I want to go to the store, and a syllable or sound repetition being I want to go to the store, or I want to go to the store. Repetition occurs in the speech of both stutterers and non-stutterers, but non-stutterers are less likely to repeat shorter units of speech, mainly repeating phrases and sometimes words, but rarely syllables. Non-stutterers will also, in the majority of cases, repeat the unit once or twice as opposed to the 6 or so times common from stutterers. Prolongations are one of the least typical behavior exhibited by stutterers. Prolongations normally happen with child stutterers and with the sounds th in English, IPA number 130, sh in English, IPA number 134, v in English, IPA number 129, or any other fricative consonant or vowel. With stutterers, prolonging a sound sometimes leads to a pitch and volume increase. Pauses are also a common source of disfluency in both stutterers and non-stutterers. Most pauses can be divided into two categories: filled pauses and unfilled pauses. Unfilled pauses are extraneous portions of silence in the ongoing stream of speech. These pauses differ from the pauses that punctuate normal speech, where they reflect common sentence structure or are used to add a particular rhythm or cadence to speech. Unfilled pauses by stutterers are usually unintentional and may cause the larynx to close, restricting the flow of air necessary for speech. Stutterers refer to this as blocking. See blocking. Filled pauses are interjections typical in normal speech like and so on. In speech, these serve as a kind of placeholder, a way a speaker lets listeners know that he or she still has the floor and is not finished speaking. In addition to being used as a way of preempting interruption, they are also used by stutterers as a way of easing into fluency or deflecting embarrassment when they cannot speak fluently. Each stutterer has different sounds that he or she personally finds difficult to speak, usually plosive consonants or closed vowels, and by using filled pauses, the stutterer can ease into continuous speech that otherwise would be more difficult to begin. This is a form of avoidance behavior. Another element of speech that is similar to filled pauses are parenthetical interjections. Interjections like so anyways, like, or you know. This pattern is quite common in teenagers and is also used heavily by some stutterers. Section 3.2. Blocking. Stuttering often develops into blocking, where the first letter or syllable becomes very difficult to pronounce and is in effect blocked from being spoken. When this happens, the larynx closes, halting the flow of air. This closure is very similar to the closure of the larynx during the Valsalva maneuver, a maneuver commonly used as a pressure equalization technique by scuba divers and aeroplane passengers to avoid barotrauma. The Valsalva maneuver intentionally exploits the Valsalva mechanism, which is a natural mechanism involving a group of neurologically coordinated muscles in the mouth, larynx, chest, and abdomen. The speech therapy techniques of gentle onset, or passive airflow, where the speaker controls his or her airflow to ease into words, aim to avoid abrupt increases in air pressure, and thereby reduce the likelihood of the Valsalva mechanism activating. Constant use of the Valsalva mechanism in speech can create nerve pathways linking speech to the Valsalva mechanism, making it more difficult to reduce blocking.